Today, we're taking an unfiltered look at the continuation of President Trump's tariff madness. New deals have been made, but did America benefit from any of them at all? Then we try to determine just how much Pete Hegseth's insecurity is driving DoD policy. Spoiler alert, it's a lot. Plus, FEMA's in need of emergency management right now. Trump picks a fight with Beyonce. Healthcare costs are going up. Kristi Noem goes horseback riding, and a MAGA-loving school superintendent shows porn during a Board of Education meeting. This is Truth in the Barrel, a different kind of whiskey rebellion. A little programming note. We know that everyone wants to talk about Trump and Epstein, but whenever one story totally dominates the news cycle, I think it's worth taking a couple steps back and looking at what isn't getting talked about enough. So today, we're going to devote this show to topics other than Epstein. But I'll tell you what, if you do want to hear what we have to say on the Trump-Epstein scandal, please go back and check our live show from earlier this week and the one from a couple weeks ago, because those shows are really important. Denver explains what's going on and why this is important, the Epstein case. And, honestly, he convinced me of its importance. I was kind of skeptical. So you go back, find the video on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, and the audio on any of your podcast platforms, okay? Because it's really important.
I'm sort of glad we're not talking about Epstein today, Amy. We've talked about it so much, everybody is. But, Trump can't help himself. You saw what happened yesterday or the day before when he said that frickin' Epstein was stealing women from his, from Mar-a-Lago. So it's just, it's going to be never ending with this guy. So I think it's good we're talking about all the other crazy that's going on in the world right now.
Yeah, more to come on Epstein. But now,
more to come.
Denver, are you ready to once again talk about a topic that, maybe it should have been an audience question back in, 1925 or maybe 1825 instead of 2025. And you know what I'm talking about here. We're talking about these tariffs.
I know.
So just to bring everybody up to speed, because I think if you're working hard and you're sort of just seeing the headlines, you might walk away thinking, and also the rhetoric from Republican lawmakers and Donald Trump, you might walk away thinking, oh, we got a deal. We got a deal from Japan a couple weeks ago, and now we got a deal with the EU. Isn't this wonderful, Denver?
What was it, $550 billion Japan was going to somehow give to us, which would have seemed like in his press release, Amy. Japan's like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? It's just everything out of this administration is just.
Just to remind people, before the Trump administration, we had some tariffs in this country. They were usually on average, 1% to 2%.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And Donald Trump comes in, decides we're going to slap tariffs on everyone for no apparent reason, except, we're going to bring manufacturing back. Okay, that's not really going to happen. Oh, we need to, pay down the national debt. Oh, okay, that's not really going to happen. I mean, none of the stuff of what he said were the reason for these tariffs is actually the reason for these things. We still don't really know. And so here this past week, he comes in with this great deal of the century with the EU, which is still at the end of the day, giving us 15% tariffs on the European Union. So we're still supposed to believe that 15% tariffs is a good thing. And what do we get out of this? What do we get out of this?
Oh, I'm sorry, Amy. We do get higher taxes.
Yes,
we do get higher costs. So I was talking to a business. I would say it's a lobbyist. So I'm trying to do a nice word for him, but it's for a massive Asian corporation. Does all the business operations there, and their job is to go up there and say, hey, let's fight back on the tariffs. They have to look at all the regulatory issues that the U.S. doing right now. What is going on? How do they actually respond to it? So he told me, and this was an individual, Republican. I just want to let you know, Amy, very Republican, down the line. And when he tells me that there's no way to navigate this, that there's no way out, that this is a religious issue. That's a quote. This is a religious issue for Trump, regardless of the economic circumstances or what those downflow effects are. It really struck me. And I know we're talking about this again. And I think this is so important because at what point does the madness end where every decision in this administration, Amy, seems like it's a religious decision or it's an ideological decision?
It's a stupid decision. It's stupid.
I was trying not to go right to stupid, ignorant, and dumb, but I'm trying to be much more specific in my language.
Well, I'm going to push back on some of the things that you hear from the right and what you hear
Yes.
from Republican lawmakers, what you might hear from the right-wing talking heads. Okay. So some of the things that I've heard is, oh, we're getting billions of dollars in investments from the Japan and the European Union. So when the Japanese deal came out, it was a vague promise of investments. That's what the Trump team said. Okay, the Japanese would invest billions and billions of dollars into the United States, and then the press, our press, went and asked the Japanese about these investments, and the Japanese basically said, it's more like loans. It's more like loans. I mean, here's what's going on. Donald Trump is like shooting us in the foot and then putting a Band-Aid on it and saying, look at me. I fixed things. I made it better. I healed us after shooting us in the foot.
I successfully put a tourniquet on myself when I shot myself. I did it. Everybody should love me. It's a self-tourniquet foreign policy ideology.
And the Europeans and the Japanese are looking at Donald Trump and they're just like, okay, we don't want to get stuck with the huge 30, 50% tariffs. So let's just go with 15%. Okay. We'll slap Trump's name on it. We'll say that we're going to invest in the United States. We're not going to do any more than what we had already planned on doing before. Okay.
Exactly.
And we'll call it a deal. And Donald Trump walks away and says, look at me. I'm the greatest deal maker ever. And the American people, I mean, they're kind of being fed a line of shit right now. They don't, and a lot of people don't really understand it. They got Republican lawmakers saying he's a great deal maker. We're not getting anything out of this.
The GOP, there's nothing there. The GOP has somehow fooled their constituency into saying that shit is chocolate. And they're just feeding it to them. And there's just brown stuff smeared all over everybody's faces as they're gobbling this down. And I think that's what's happening right now. And there's always a downstream effect. I was reading earlier about front-ended loading for buying based on tariffs that are coming downstream. And that's what's happening right now. So when they're even looking at any of these economic indicators, Amy, there's a lot of front-loaded buying that's going on right now. And that's because they got to get their inventories up before tariffs hit. There's always a downstream effect for higher taxes and tariffs. It always happens. There's no way around it. It's an economic certainty, regardless of the numbers that are even being reported by the government. And Amy, here's the other thing I want to ask you too, and I know we have a lot to go over, is that for years, the Republicans said that the deep state and the Democrats were fudging the numbers for job numbers and not presenting a fair picture of what's happening in the economy. You have to remember that every accusation is a confession. I don't even know if we can trust the economic numbers coming out of this administration right now. And so for me, it's what is happening in the local microeconomies around and what are you saying? And right now you are seeing a cooled off economy. We're already looking at job starts are cooling down. It will stop. If we're having retractions in GDP, we're having a cooling off period and tariffs haven't even hit completely yet. My fear is in the next economic quarter, we're going to see not only job starts going down, but literally that creeping rise in unemployment that'll start to hit the 4.3, 4.4, 4.5 as we go to the end of the year.
Trump could have done nothing and we'd be in better shape. He could have had no deal. He could have literally not said the word tariff at all, and we'd be in way better shape. These deals are making it worse for our country. I'm just telling you that. The lower tariffs, that they put lower tariffs on Japanese-made cars and European-made cars than they do on American-made cars that have to import Canadian parts. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Trump is literally working against American manufacturing. That's just one example. And Trump knows that these tariffs are hurting lots of Americans, or are going to. So he's actually floated this idea that he provides
you beat me to it.
Rebate checks.
Dang it.
Rebate checks for the tariffs.
Yeah.
If the tariffs were paid by the Europeans and the Japanese and all these other countries that are stealing from us and being unfair, then why do people need rebate checks?
Well, that's not the spin though, Amy, right? The reason that they're getting rebate checks is because they've gotten so much back on the tariffs. Remember, they're putting out 150 billion collected. Yeah, have you seen the memes that are coming out on, far right media? And there's coordinated messaging. I don't know if you've seen that the influencers, the RNC, the National Republican Congressional Committee, and the executive branch are all messaging exactly the same over all the social media platforms because they have to somehow put out cover. But you got to remember, Amy, these rebate checks are because the tariffs are so great for us, right? That's how the GOP is spinning it. And, and I'm thinking, is it us, Amy? Right? Maybe it's me and you, right? Maybe it's those who are actually paying attention, who are the almost extinct species when it comes to looking at how policy affects Americans downstream. And I think that's what scares me. And lastly, Trump only makes decisions that benefit himself. So if you're looking at these tariffs, it's helping buddies. It's somehow these tariffs, right? The reciprocity, either from people that have given to his campaign or the fact that money is being made on the flip on these tariffs for specific industries and helping his friends and the people that support him are really the reason that these tariffs are being enacted.
I don't know. I don't know what's in his head. I don't know. I can't.
Well,
the MAGA Republicans they really have to do pretzels to try to figure this out. Here's the bottom line on how crazy this is. When you think about like these rebate checks, okay, you are literally taxing Americans. Okay. Only to send a check back to Americans for the same amount with Trump's signature on it.
Well, what was it? $600?
So that is the biggest scam in the world. And if the American people fall for that, I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
They already have.
We're gonna be taxed. Okay. And then turn around, pay for it. Right. In rising costs, and tariffs are a tax. I mean, even Rand Paul said that, and then turn around and get a rebate check from the government with, Donald Trump's picture and signature on it. We have just been scammed like you wouldn't believe. We just shot ourselves in the foot. He shot us in the foot, puts a Band-Aid on it, and he bandages it up and says, success.
Well, 77 million Americans shot us in the foot. Okay, so let's just be brutal. When I talked about, certain types of individuals in extinct species, or the I Am Legend of the Richard Matheson book, right, where it's the last guy who's not a vampire sitting in jail like, hey, I'm the odd guy. I can actually go out in the sunlight, right? I'm the last of my species. I feel like sort of reality insanity, is on this downward trajectory, across the United States. But Amy, this already happened, right? There were 77 million people who voted for this guy. I can blame the voters. I know we can talk about disinformation. We can talk about, flooding the zone with shit, like Steve Bannon said. We can talk about, years of manipulation. We can talk about individuals who believe that the supernatural talks directly to them, or they listen to their prophets, or whatever you want to talk about. But what it comes down to is 77 million Americans are at fault. The voters are at fault. And it's starting to get very difficult for me not to have a little bit of bitterness in that, and I do have people who push back, right? And they're like, Denver, well, that's less than a third of the population. Great. However, when you look at the 340 million people in the U.S. and I look at people under 18, and I look at the number of people that vote and the people who don't care, we still have even less than that voted for Kamala Harris. And that's what I tell people, like, okay, that's great, but less than that voted for Harris. So where are we? What does that mean, right, for our republic? If we don't even have everybody voting, and the people that do can't seem to see the forest for the trees, or they picked, fantasy over fact, right? Where
Yeah.
truth is something that's so elusive to them that they can't even get their arms around it.
Well, it means we have a lot of work to do still. To me, that's what it means.
That's
But hey,
right.
while President Trump is busy creating economic insecurity for us all,
Yes.
Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, who I love,
I know he's your favorite guy. I heard.
Yeah, he's struggling with a much more personal type of, I'll call it masculine insecurity, right? Just this past week, the Department of Defense came down and basically said it's not allowing its employees, including members of the military, officers in the military, to participate in certain events. So he doesn't want them going to think tanks. He doesn't want them participating in events dealing with, higher education. He has put out polygraph tests to try to catch people who I guess are disloyal to him.
Polygraphs are bullshit.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Polygraphs are just a tool of intimidation. I've told people that too. They're like, Denver, how have you passed so many polygraphs? Well, I'm like, well, I know they don't work. I mean, I not that I'm lying. I'm not telling people I'm a pathological guy, right? I don't really care. But polygraphs are just a tool of intimidation. We know that in the intelligence business, they're absolutely don't work. And I'm not trying to tell people go ahead and be a criminal and lie. That's not cool, because evidence, facts, and data will eventually bite you, hopefully. But yeah, I just find it amazing that we have loyalty tests from a guy like Pete Hegseth. I mean, this is a guy who drinks his own bathwater. I mean, he's drunk on it, and not trying to make a play on on Pete's alcohol troubles, but he is drunk on his own bathwater.
Well, I want to explain a little bit about why this matters from somebody that was in the military for 24 years. Okay. So part of what we do in the military is certainly at the higher ranks, the mid-grade ranks. And this was one of the things that I did while I was in the Pentagon, was to help the Marine Corps. I was a Marine, right? To help the Marine Corps integrate better with other agencies of government. Okay, that was my job. And why is that important? It was really important because a lot of times, the first time we ever met people of the US government that had important roles to play was in a combat zone. And we didn't work well. We didn't train with the CIA or USAID or some of the State Department folks. And guess what? We're all on the same team. We all have an important role. And so one of the things that we have to do in the military is get out of our little shell. Get out of our little, we're just the military and all we do is military stuff. Why? Because we don't just do all military stuff. We work with other people. We work with other agencies. And the other thing that closing down these programs for the military to go out, the military sends officers out to places like business to learn about business practices. We'll send, a military officer to Amazon for a year, or to some other, to Ford or to GM or something, to understand business. And that does a couple of things. It brings knowledge and information back to the Department of Defense about how best business practices and how we can make things better. And it also brings military knowledge, which is also important, to American businesses. We are, when you do that, you're cutting off a primary way that the United States military goes out and sort of sells itself. And when people say to me, I don't understand why the military can't take on this role and that role. Well, part of it is there's a big divide between what people understand about the military and what it can and can't do. And to bridge that divide, you go to places like the Council of Foreign Relations, the Center for Strategic and International Studies. You do send military officers out to these think tanks, to academia. It makes sense. And to shut this down is just dumb.
It's dumb. It's dumb that you're not letting military officers or military individuals cross-pollinate with think tanks. And I want to tell you a little story. You know, I was raised very religious. And when I was reading this, right, we were going to talk about this, Amy, and I had this thought that hit me. And I remember I went to something called seminary every morning. I was raised Mormon. So before high school, 5 a.m., we had to show up for church. So not only did I go on church on Sundays, I had youth group on Wednesday night. I had priesthood meetings on Sunday. We had Bishop's Warehouse on Saturday. Every morning at 5 a.m., I would go to church. I mean, this is literally called indoctrination. But they taught me something, and I want to run this by you, Amy, just what you said. They said, listen, the only thing that really matters is learning this gospel, this specific set of scripture, and the whatever intellectual worth is in the words on this page that's obviously, been directly, injected into the frontal lobe of the prophets and on paper. But they said something that you just said. They said, but if you run into any other thing that's diametrically opposed to this, that's against this, that looks like it's apostate material, that is a think tank, or it's reading other books, right? That is against what you should be doing. You should not do that. As a real good Mormon, you should not be actually doing that. This is all you need. And I feel like in the military with Hegseth, there's the same thing, right? Why have any, I would say, expansion of opinion, different perspectives, maybe real thought, facts, and data that's not based on sort of this religious belief system and loyalty tests that are going on in our military today? I think what you just outlined, Amy, is the most frightening thing I've heard so far, is insulating the military from any outside influences for a specific programmatic way of doing things that's outside free thought. And I think it's just the way they're raised. I think Hegseth, listen, nobody chosen in any position in the United States government at this time under the Trump administration is competent. And most of them, are outwardly displaying their religious symbology, as you know, with his tattoos. They look very white nationalist. They definitely have that slant. I think you're looking at a Christian nationalist way of thought that's determining how the United States is run. And I think that puts us on a path that's very frightening.
It is frightening. Here's what the Pentagon said, quote, they made the move to avoid lending the department's name to organizations and events that run counter to Trump's values.
It's made
Seriously?
up. Counter to Trump's values. That's
counter
exactly
to Trump's values. So this is so
effing believable.
It's so wrong. And here's the other thing is you're pulling the military from doing international security forums. Folks, that's where you get to know your allies. That's where you talk to your partners, the people that you're going to solve problems with, the people that you're going to maybe go to war with eventually. Hopefully not. And if you're smart, you'll work with them to help stem it before it actually happens. It is ridiculous. And taking away our military's ability to go to these events, it's a two-way street. So not only and this is what Hegseth's worried about, right? He's worried about anyone in the military going anywhere, hearing from anyone, that thinks differently or that may have a different view on things. Okay. He can't stand that. So, but it's also a way for these outside entities, academia, business, our allies and partners, international folks, think tanks, all of these places to hear and understand better the operational needs and concerns and structure and values of our military.
What are Trump's values, Amy? So are we instantiating sexual abuse, fraud? Are we instantiating felonies? I mean, instead of salutes, is everybody going to go around and grope each other's crotch? I mean, is that the values that we're actually instilling in the United States military? Hey, man, We grab them by the nether regions. Pap, pap, everybody, is that what we're doing? Is that Trump's values? What are Trump's values? Trump has no values. So what we're saying is we have a military that's aligning with an individual, not with the American Constitution, right? Who likes to ride on buses, talk about women and grabbing in the nether regions, sexual abuse, right? Saying how much he loves young women, hanging around with Epstein, right? Being convicted of felonies, right? This is the worst human being on the planet or damn close to it. So how about we don't align with Trump's values? How about we align with the US Constitution and what we should be as human beings? Because I don't think grabbing people by the crotch is really the way to go in normal human behavior.
But take away all that value stuff, which is important. This is an operational need. It is a strategic need. It makes sense to go to these places, have the United States military out there talking about what we can do, what the military can do, and also gaining information and knowledge from places of success outside the military. It just makes sense.
Well, Hegseth's in charge, right? And I'm not really surprised, that a guy like Hegseth would put stock in credibility of polygraphs or talk about Trump's values. This junk science of polygraphy, right? Mismanagement from values that don't exist. But those specialties that mindset have now come to FEMA, Amy.
Yeah.
It's come to FEMA. And when you see people resigning right from FEMA, you start to think maybe there's an issue there too, right?
Yeah. So FEMA has lost a lot of its leadership, the leadership of that agency that actually has expertise. Most recently, in the last week or so, the FEMA search and rescue chief resigned after frustration due to the response to the Texas floods. So, as you know, it took more than 72 hours after the flooding for Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem to authorize the deployment of FEMA's search and rescue network. And apparently that was the tipping point that led to this longtime public servant, this leader. That is what led to his voluntary departure. He had months of frustration with the Trump administration trying to dismantle the agency that he was a part of. And so that was the end of it. And he resigned. And he's one of dozens of high ranking officials that have left FEMA since Trump took office. And, look, the agency itself faces plummeting morale. It faces a brain drain of people who actually know what they're doing, leaving, these longtime leaders leaving. Right now, 20 different states, Denver, are suing FEMA to restore a grant program that was aimed at helping local governments prevent damage from natural disasters, to do what's necessary to have resiliency. The Trump administration ended this program. Okay. And the Trump administration called this program wasteful and fraudulent spending.
You're seeing this weird alignment, Amy, of FEMA, things that actually work, being cut based on fantasy or ideology, while we're seeing this rise in catastrophic weather events.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these happen in red states.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm having a really tough time that these individuals in red states, like what's happened in Texas, it's just been absolutely awful. And if you go down even in your home state of Kentucky, right, the things that have happened in Kentucky and even here in Virginia, right? But I find it amazing. And I know that this is, and I know the thing is, I don't know if people are listening in a way. I know a lot of people are listening to us. Our podcast's exploding. It's great. But how do we get to those to say, you're voting for somebody who's cutting the very aid to rebuild the communities, right, that you have right now, and you voted for him? Yeah, it is one of the it's one of the weirdest things. I can't get my mind around how we reach them, how we identify with them, how we say, stop, look at the facts, look at the data. You have a
Well,
president cutting the very aid to rebuild your communities from natural disasters. I It's a direct
how about a
corollary.
concrete example in red parts of North Carolina? Okay, Hillsborough, North Carolina,
Hmm.
was planning to use a $6 million grant to build a wastewater pumping station. They to rebuild after washed out roads and bridges. They had damaged utilities after the devastating flooding that they had there that devastated homes and businesses, and Trump got rid of it. No more, gone. Paloxville, North Carolina is another example. These preventative measures are much more cost effective. Okay. And he's saying, this stuff is wasteful and fraudulent. And no, it's not. Ask the mayor of these towns. They need this stuff. And then the other pushback you hear from the Republicans and the right wing is, and because they follow whatever Trump
Oh,
says, and it's Donald Trump who said, "Hey, well, we should leave all this emergency management stuff to the states. Just like we don't need the federal government to do that. Like, we just shut off funding to FEMA, and let the local and states and their agencies do this, right? What Denver? Why should we not do that? That makes sense, right? Let the local folks do it.
When it comes to infrastructure, and I don't know, people need to probably also read the Constitution about what the federal government is responsible for. When you look at FEMA, it's a direct offshoot of infrastructure protection, right? And that's one of the things that the founding fathers were also very worried about, is how do we actually not only build infrastructure, but maintain infrastructure and improve
Mhm.
infrastructure. So there's so many layers to this as we go down. Why you just wouldn't leave it to the states? There's a mobilization issue. There's a resource issue, but there's
Mhm.
a reason that we have this thing called federal taxes, right? There's these pooling of monies for the greater good. And I know that people are like, well, rugged individualism, you go back to Reagan, and people say, well, we need to go back to Roosevelt and Truman. Well, let's even go back further to Teddy Roosevelt, the national park system, a progressive Republican. And we can just keep going back and looking at, there needs to be a public trust. Regardless if we're free, if you think we're a democracy or a republic, or people argue about definitions, what it comes down to in the United States is that we do have a public trust, and the federal government has the public trust to enact, right, or to utilize those funds in a way that benefit everybody in those states. And let me just say this: there's so much hypocrisy here. So we talk about leaving these decisions to the states, yet the federal government are passing laws where the states can't even regulate their own technologies. There's so many um, ironic things here, but there's so much hypocrisy. There's so much lying. There's so much gaslighting and shading. This is a public trust. And the fact is, the states at times can't mobilize, but here's the states that are really in danger. You ready for this, Amy? Red states.
Mhm.
Red states. They're poor. If you look at the top 10, top 20 states, tell me what's red and what's blue. Hit me. Let's do a fact and data check. Hit me. Tell me how it's going for you. Because right now it's federal funds. Even if you're looking at Medicaid,
Mhm.
you're looking at everything downstream. It's federal funds that prop up the poorest regions in our country. And we still feel like it's a responsibility as Americans to take care of them. And the majority of those areas are red. So I just find it amazing that they would cut off their nose to spite their face.
Well, one, you have that "I follow the Constitution" bumper sticker on your car, on your truck there, okay? The preamble. Go back to the preamble of the US Constitution, you know, in order to provide for what? You know, the welfare, general welfare. So there are things that the federal government should be doing, okay? That's
Absolutely.
number one. Number two, there's a practical part of this. So when I hear, "Oh, just leave it to the states." Okay. The states and local governments, a lot of times, especially as you just mentioned, do not have the capacity. They do not have the capacity. In fact, researchers surveyed thousands just in the last year, because this has been an issue, right? Since Trump has said this. researchers surveyed thousands of state and local emergency management directors across the country. And guess what they said, Denver, when they were asked, hey, should we just defund what you get from FEMA and you guys take over everything? They basically 100% of them said, no, don't do that. We're already overworked. We're already underpaid. We're understaffed. We're underappreciated. Their work is already hamstrung by lack of funding. They don't have enough funding. So cutting their funding even more is dumb. They already have staffing shortages. There's this widespread misunderstanding of the role of emergency management in government. So they're already fighting that. And so there's a capacity issue. We're not paying these folks even enough to do their jobs. And to sort of dump it on the states and local governments, they're not going to be able to do it.
I feel like
that's the facts.
Don't you feel like there's going to be DOGE exhaustion at some point, or this federal cut exhaustion that just sort of starts to seep in to some of these areas? And here's the thing: is we're coming up on midterms in 2026. Amy, I would hope, if we're talking about the things that we've talked about before with Epstein and sexual abuse, is used by the Democrats as literally a million-pound shit hammer, right, as they go into the midterms. But the other thing too is this: they better be using the FEMA cuts, catastrophes. They need to politicize the fact that they've been politicized. They need to, it's interesting. I was like, oh, you got to wait a while to do this. I get it. There's when you have a natural disaster, you don't want to immediately go, is this Trump's Katrina, right? When you see all this stuff happening, you need to give people time to really to recover, right? Not only mentally, but spiritually, right? When you have something like that happen. However, if people that are running against the incumbents in these areas, who are voting against their very constituencies, aren't bringing this up in the midterms, it is a massive foul. It's something so egregious if the political establishment going against those voting against their constituency doesn't have the guts or the fortitude or the intelligence to attack on every level simultaneously and just rip them limb from limb politically. I mean, that's what needs to happen. And I hope I see it.
Well, it's one thing when there's a natural disaster and government is doing all it can to expertly and efficiently help. And we're all Americans and we all want to help. That's why we want to have an agency of government that is there to help during that time. What frustrates me is when you're actively undermining that agency, making it not work, defunding it, firing all the people that know what they're doing. I mean, the current head of FEMA under Trump doesn't have any experience in emergency management, Denver. Like
None.
That's the kind of thing that really frustrates me. It's the stupidity of it. But I think it's time, because we talked a lot already, and I think I need a little bit of whiskey here.
Well,
what do you think?
I was saying, like, I just did something really stupid. And you're gonna be like, Den, not you, you whiskey expert. So I'm sitting here. So I was getting ready, right? And I had grabbed some Glen Turret. Okay. So I'm sitting here working the cork while you.
That's okay. I haven't poured myself any yet either.
You're gonna say, Den, there's no way you did this. This has already been. You know what I did? I ripped the cork in half.
Oh, that's not good.
That's a foul.
Yeah.
I think that's the first time I've done that on a bottle of scotch, because I was trying to work it real easy back and forth. You know what I'm saying? Like this, right? And I'm like, oh my God, I just ripped off the goddamn guy, ripped my cork in half.
It's
what's happening to me. Literally, what's happening to me.
It's you can't do two things at once, Denver. That's the bottom line. It's juggling.
Hey, I've been told that for 36 years, Amy.
Yeah, just focus on one thing at a time. I'll tell you while you're pouring yourself some. I'll tell everybody what I'm drinking. And the funny part is, because we're going to go into a segment where we're going to talk a little bit about the country Argentina. I tried. We have a collection here because my husband flies all over the place, and so he brings back whiskey or bourbon from wherever, really around the country, around the world, and that's kind of cool. And so I was looking at all of our bourbon, and we don't have our whiskey, and we don't have anything from Argentina. So, and you'll know why I care about that later. But I couldn't find anything, so I picked up this one. This is American. It's called, I'm sure you know about it. It's called Whistle Pig Piggyback,
Very well.
100% rye whiskey.
Had it, know it well.
It's they claim that it's built for cocktails. It's interesting because it's 100% rye. Okay.
You know, when somebody says, listen, I love Whistle Pig, I don't like that very much. I'm gonna tell you why. And I love Whistle, but here's the thing. Whenever anybody says this is a whiskey built for cocktails, that means they don't want you to drink it straight. No, I shouldn't say.
Well, I have that same question, but it is bold.
No, you make a whiskey to drink whiskey.
It's distilled in Vermont, which I didn't know, but the rye mash comes from Canada. So,
really?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Our enemy to the north?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, well, cheers. Well, can I brag a little bit though?
Yeah.
So there's Doug and everybody's watching us right now. The people who help us, the incredible people who make this happen. You got to it's impressive, right? And I just want to show people this. When I have right under here, because I know me and Amy are doing this, that I always have a backup shot, right? So the fact that I broke the cork, right?
How many is that 5 bottles?
That's
in front
5,
of you
right? So I had the Glenturret, right? So I always have to have a backup. So I think you got to give me a little bit of props that, I ripped the cork off the Glenturret, but I immediately had a backup gun, right? So if you saw, I was doing this, right? I'm like, oh shit, I broke the cork. I'm like, oh my God, I got to go to number 2. So I picked up my wife's reserve, right? And I'm like, okay, this is great. I got a batch 6 1 New Orleans. I also have our rye whiskey, which is our special batch rye right here if I need it. And I also have one that I was going to open for you later, right? Which was batch 1, the first Christine Reserve ever, which was something I wanted to actually gift you at some point, by the way, Amy. And of course, I'm ready. But whenever I'm really feeling like it's time to party, I bring out the honey rye, which I also have. So I just want people to know that I got a 5-shooter here and that there's never a time that I can't go to another gun if I run out of bullets. So cheers. Amy. Cheers to you. Cheers to you. This is amazing.
Well,
this is
the
amazing.
Whistle Pig's good. It is very spicy. It is very bold. If you like that, it's a good one for you.
It's a good one. All right. So we got the whiskey poured. So I know there's some good stuff coming out with some quick shots, right? And I guess it's some crazy shit here, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. The first thing is I think very important that everybody have a sense of what's going on. Healthcare costs, folks, are going to go up. And we haven't seen this in the last couple years, but there's going to be big price hikes for businesses and people buying health insurance next year. Premiums are going to go up. And, we know this because each spring and summer, the health insurers submit rate filings to state regulators to justify the premium changes. And so we know that these premiums are going to go up. And when asked why, Denver, insurance companies were asked, hey, why are you going to raise your costs? They cited skyrocketing pharmacy costs. And a lot of this is because of the tax credits that are going away, thanks to Republicans. Those tax credits that were driving coverage to be more affordable. Thank you, Republicans, for making healthcare costs go up. And thank you, Republicans, for your really great tariffs that are making pharmacy costs go up because of higher, more expensive drugs, more expensive medical equipment, more expensive medical supplies that come from overseas. Thanks.
I feel like I'm on The Simpsons. Yay! Yay! Because it's so ridiculous. And so, I have an AI company, right, that does health tech, right? Insure tech and health tech. And, we do some risk intelligence too, but I'm really proud. We're about to come up with our first product, soft launch, end of August, October 1st, hard launch, where we're using AI to help verify insurance and adjudicate claims. So I got a call from about CMS and that there's going to be this new headhunting contracts. And here, let me explain really quick why it's going to go up further. Because of fraud, waste, and abuse in DOGE, do you know that contractors that are adjudicating claims are going to get paid on denials only? So they're going to get a cut of their denials based on fraud, which incentivizes them to automatically deny and then wait for somebody to fight it. So CMS, you're talking about our health services are changing the way, instead of just paying people for processing, they're only going to pay people if they deny claims. That is happening. I saw the contract. I'm going to do an op-ed on it. So I won't let people to know they should see that that's coming, but I've had enough, right? We're seeing this AI on AI war, where you're going to have this DOGE specific Trump administration fantasy thing, right? Where they're going to just pay on denials, and you're going to have small, providers, even corporate providers are going to have to actually get AI to go back and forth to fight whatever they define, right, as fraud. Obviously, there is fraud, waste, and abuse. Don't get me wrong. But if you incentivize companies to be paid only on denials with no other payment system, they're going to deny. So it's going to get worse before it gets better. And that's because the big healthcare lobbies own Congress. Right? It's just that simple.
Well, and it's because the actions of this bill that was just passed and the constant trying to undermine healthcare in America that, no offense, Republicans and Trump are continually trying to do. It's now driving up out-of-pocket premium payments for next year by over 75%. I mean, that's what they're saying.
It's what happens. The downstream effects of stupid is terminal.
Yeah,
they're terminal.
All right,
they are terminal.
On a more lighter note, more fun, I guess, but also really freaking crazy. And maybe Doug can put a picture of this up when we do our show, but I think Trump tweeted this out, so we have to find the tweet. But he basically lied about Beyonce, saying that Beyonce, he calls for Beyonce, the singer, to be prosecuted, by saying this false claim that somehow Beyonce took money from Kamala Harris, $11 million, apparently, from Kamala Harris to endorse Kamala Harris in the 2024 election. So she should be prosecuted for that. First of all, let me just say that all of that is total bullshit and completely false. It's a flat out lie. But the president of the United States is saying this, and he says so much stuff that we just don't even, it goes in one ear and out the other for most of us anyway. But the funny part about this to me is how Beyonce responded. She basically said, hey, Trump, on my last tour, I raked in $500 million. So why would I need 11 million more?
Which she's so rich. She's so talented, right? She's probably looking at Trump like, you frickin' just, you cottage cheese looking human, right? Get out of here, And I think, I think that's where we're at right now is there's so many lies in the ecosystem. And I know I said this before. I know I keep coming back to it, Amy. I'm telling you, sanity and critical thinking, right, could become extinct if we don't watch out. It is insane. And anybody would believe it. But I will tell you, I know you said it goes one ear and out the other, but MAGA, they have this little junk drawer in their head where if you tell them, hey, right, the earth revolves around the sun and it's round, they will reject that because in their junk drawer, they have already cataloged in some ways that it's a flat earth and there's an ice wall. So, and they've cataloged that Beyonce must have been paid by the deep state, right, for Kamala. Right, that's already in here. They have to say that Obama, right, and Obamagate, right, went after Trump, right, and set him up, and Russiagate was a scam. They have to believe that Epstein and Trump didn't hang out for 15 years, and Epstein took girls from Mar-a-Lago, and that was the breeding ground for Mar-a-Lago. They have to believe that the January 6th election was stolen. They have to believe that also. They have to believe that Obama killed SEAL Team 6 because Donald Trump said so. They have to believe that also. They have to believe that Trump University was legitimate because Trump said he was being attacked. They have to believe Trump wasn't a felon because it was a deep state op. They have to believe that he didn't sexually abuse E. Jean Carroll because she's a liar and it was a deep state op. So all that stuff they keep.
How does the everyday person who may have voted for Trump, how do they square with the fact that he lies so easily, that we know are lies. I just don't, I don't
And
understand. To me, it's just really hard to look at somebody like that and then say, how can you ever take anything? Even when he
Amy,
tells the truth about things, how do you believe it's the truth?
Amy, you
When
ran
he
as a
just,
Democrat. I'm sorry. Anything you say is a globalist and deep state conspiracy theory to
Mm,
those who vote against you.
all right.
I'm not even joking.
Let
I've tried to
let's get to
tell
Argentina.
people. Oh, so we're getting to
Let's
Argentina.
let's go to
Argentina.
Argentina.
So what happened in Argentina? I do know, as you know,
Well,
I'm
you tell
very.
us, because I know you were following this closely.
Oh, it made me so angry. I lost my mind, as you know, like literally lost my mind. And because I'm watching Kristi Noem in Argentina, the great land of Canada, near Argentina,
Yeah.
in Argentina, riding a horse, saying, "There's nothing like riding my Argentinian steed as I'm going through the fields of South America."
With my
And I'm
friend
like,
Corey
and my
behind me.
friend Corey, who we really like to be together.
All right. So tell everybody what this is
So
all about here.
this is Kristi. She put out a video that looked like it came from Yellowstone, or it was a music video.
This is our Department of Homeland
Of
Security
course, yeah,
secretary.
our
Correct.
DHS lead, the person who runs our mass police force.
Right.
Is in South America riding horses and making cosplaying videos, these narcissistic sociopathic videos that somehow she's a movie star with her hair extensions flying in the wind. And I think we're to a point that it's so ridiculous and so narcissistic. But every time I see it, it's the bonanza thing. But also when we were, the other thing that I was thinking about is like, she ran calling wildfire.
Oh,
She
God.
ran calling
I forgot you were going to sing again. Okay.
wildfire.
Yeah, there we go. Thanks, Doug. Thanks with the images of the horses. I
Thank
mean,
you.
let's just take a step back and remind everybody how incredibly, insanely crazy this is to have a cabinet secretary who, he's
It's
using
ludicrous.
official social media accounts to put her, I don't know, personal propaganda. It's just bizarro
Well,
out
she's going to
there.
run for president in 28. So this is what you're saying is
Oh,
she's building up for a presidential run in 28.
okay.
No,
I hadn't thought about that.
yeah, and I think also the other thing I think she's thinking about, based on the fact that she's DHS, if there is a second term for Republican and she isn't, I think she wants to go somewhere else, right? And maybe Sec State or something like that if Rubio moves up. Because I think what you're going to see maybe is a Vance Rubio ticket. But I think Noem thinks he has an outside chance. Also, Trump's been very critical in some ways of Vance. And it's sort of like this, like, he's a good guy with his little hipster beard, right? He can get over there. I just don't think Trump thinks Vance is the natural progression. I think it's one of his sons. And I also think people need to, the dark horse here is Ivanka. And I think people need to make sure. I've met Ivanka. She's 10 times smarter than her brothers. She knows when to be quiet. She knows how to sort of stay, beneath the noise. But when she pops up, she's talented as far as the way that she can actually communicate in some ways. So I think people need to watch out. I think you have a lot of people positioning for president, but the reason you see Noem doing this cult of personality thing is to run for POTUS or to get a better position in the next administration.
Okay. I believe you. All right. Far right Oklahoma superintendent, school superintendent, mega guy, far right Christian, conservative. He was caught with porn videos on his computer.
Just own up to it, man.
At like a school board meeting. I mean, Denver.
That's
family
love and
values.
life right there. Family values.
Den.
So okay. Okay.
You can't make this shit up.
So there I was, Amy. A big Republican fundraiser asked me to come to Texas because he wanted to show me this new way of building housing for the underprivileged. And we go in there and there's about 8 or 9 people working for him. The guy's in his late 70s. He's probably between 78 and 80. Right? He's been doing this a long time. He has these rounded huts that are like weatherproof, that are like 250 to 300 square feet for 1 to 2 people. And it was bizarre, by the way. Once I got there, I knew the guy was clinically insane. But, he had pictures of Jesus and crosses everywhere. And I'm like, oh, it looks like a fairly religious guy who thinks he's helping people, but this looks like something from Dune. This is the craziest shit I've ever seen. So we go in there and they're setting up everything. And I'm sitting there with my consultant and I'm waiting, and they had this huge screen, Amy. It's got to be one of those, projector screens. It's probably an 80-inch screen. This is 2019. So I'm sitting there like, oh, this is interesting. And he goes, okay, we're going to get it going here. And the screen pops up and it's hardcore porn happening in front of me.
Oh.
There's people there's like 20 people there. And I'm just sitting there looking at it. And I look over at my buddy and I say, well, that's interesting housing. And we start I got the giggles, right? Because they can't get it off. I mean, the moaning and the noises were so loud, it was reverberating through this weird structure. This dome structure had great acoustics. So, I'm like hearing screaming and weird bodily noises and functions, and they can't turn it off. I got to laughing so hard. Here I am, a congressman, right? And I'm crying because I'm like, hey, why don't you guys just unplug it? The porn's not going to go off. And the guy's like, somebody planted porn on my computer. And there was no male employees. He had 7 employees, all these very attractive young girls under 30, right, that work for him. And they're looking in horror, absolute horror at us sitting there like, oh, well, this is interesting. I've never seen how the breast was won. This is interesting. So I just want to let you know. And by the way, here's the thing with Ryan Walters, right? I don't think he understands how to defend himself. Here's what you do if you get caught. And I think this will help everybody out there. And I hope they're listening, Amy. You rail against people. How dare you say that I have a porn addiction? It's just a hobby.
Right. I don't know how he's defending himself right now. I think he's reports are saying that he's saying that it was planted and all this stuff. But I mean, come on, seriously.
Oh, it's not. You listen, hey, Amy, if I jump on this, right, and all of a sudden porn starts to play off my laptop, I'm going to tell you, like, hey, Amy, the first thing you do is you blame your wife, right? You're like, my wife must see. Ryan doesn't understand, right, how to actually deflect quickly, right? Oh my God, my kid has a porn addiction. Now your kid might be 4 years old. He's not going to know, right? Because he's 4. He's not going to remember that he had a porn addiction at 4 years old. So you can blame your kid. You can blame your wife. Always blame it on a hobby. Or you could say you were doing research on your opponent who was a porn addict and they had sent it to you and you couldn't believe it was sent to you. And you had actually sent it to the FBI. Then you go back and you try to backdate and call the FBI.
That sounds like you know a lot about this, Denver. I don't know. I'm just going to sit and listen. Okay. I'm not going to go there. But
well, Amy, if you ever call with porn, give me a call and I'll help you out. I'll help you out of any mix. I'll help you out. Right. I'll do the Ryan Walters defense.
I'm not going to comment on that. So, but here on a more serious note, and this I just sort of want to talk about a little bit before we end. I want to say one thing about the preliminary report and the public hearings that are happening right now over the horrific midair collision, the crash that happened back in January in Washington, D.C., over the Potomac River, where you had an Army Black Hawk helicopter collided with a regional passenger jet, okay? The testimony and the preliminary report are happening right now. The preliminary report is out. And the hearings are showing that the Black Hawk altimeters could have easily been over 100 feet off of reality in terms of their altitude.
Huge.
So what does that mean, folks? That actually is a big factor, and it could explain why the helicopter may have actually been flying high in the flight path of the jets. And those of you who are pilots, you believe your instruments. And if your instruments are telling you bad information, you can't tell. The human eye cannot tell, I'm 50 feet off. That's what your instruments tell you. You can't
God help you if you're 100
feet
feet off.
I mean, unless you're like the Blue Angels flying very, very close to another aircraft. You can't even tell what like 50 feet is when you're, 500 feet in the air. It's just hard. Okay. And here's what I want to say about this. After that mishap happened, there were a lot of people out in the United States who accused the female Army pilot, one of the pilots was female, of being at fault for this. Immediately, you had the President of the United States, the Secretary of Transportation, the Secretary of Defense, all of these people jumping to conclusions, blaming DEI, because that was their, that's their way of saying it's the woman's fault, right? Just say DEI. And it's all bullshit.
That's exactly what they mean.
And that pilot's family had to live through that crap.
It's horrific.
And here we are finding out that, you know what? This altimeter thing, if it proves, and we won't know until the full investigation, Denver, comes out probably at the beginning of next year. But from what I can tell right now, this could have happened to anyone. It could have happened to any pilot out there. And the pilots out there know this. They know this.
Of course.
So I'm just saying it's a travesty of what our so-called leaders have done in this immediate aftermath. It's not going to make the headlines, I don't think, the same way that the original labeling of what could have happened. But it's important to me to make sure that people know what the preliminary reports are saying.
Amy, well done. And everybody knows the Trump administration, they do not let facts get in the way of a good conspiracy theory. Cheers.
Yeah. Cheers. Well, cheers. It's important to wrap up on a positive note. Always.
All right. Let's do this.
I want to do another cheers to this time to the Medicaid ruling recently, that this big, beautiful bill, call it the big, beautiful betrayal. That's what I call it, that the Republicans jammed through. They tried to cut funding for all of Planned Parenthood in that bill because they're angry that certain clinics of Planned Parenthood give reproductive care to women, okay, in the form of abortions when needed. And so the Republicans tried to cut all the funding for Planned Parenthood. And the judge in this case said, you can't do that. So cheers to the judge.
Cheers to the judge. And let me tell you, if it wasn't for Planned Parenthood when we lost our first two kids, I don't know what we would have done. So there you go.
Yeah.
What a show. What a show. Amy, we only hit probably 7 to 10% of everything we could have done today. And we still hit an amazing amount of topics. It was incredible. And I think we are helping. And I think if people want to hear what we have to say, you need to subscribe, right? They have to subscribe. Please download us on your favorite podcast, but follow us on socials. There's a lot of cool stuff that comes out. And I'm not just talking about our Truth in the Barrel socials. You need to follow Amy on X. You need to follow Amy on Blue Sky, right? You need to, if you want to follow me, great. I'm a little bit more irreverent. Amy's a little bit more specific and directed. So please do. We just try to make sure that we're always on the side of facts and truth. And cheers, Amy. Another great show.
See you next week, Denver.
Well, yep. And I'll see you next week.
Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for being with us.
Bye.